There is something true about your life right now that has a start date, and you couldn't tell me what it is. Think about that for a second, because it's strange. You can date the big things. You know when you got married. You know the day of the diagnosis, or the day of the move, or the day the job started. Those have anniversaries. Some of them are in your phone. But the thing that actually shapes most of your week, the arrangement you're living in, the way you handle a certain kind of conversation, the door you stop knocking on, the place your money goes. The reason you and that person are the way you are now. No date. It's just how things are. It's the water. If somebody asked you when it started, you'd say something vague, and the vagueness would be honest, because there wasn't a ceremony. Here's what I want to tell you tonight. There was a moment. There was an actual afternoon, in an actual year, when a thing got decided. And it almost certainly didn't feel like a decision at the time. It felt like a reasonable response to a situation. It probably took less than a minute, and you have been living inside it ever since. So here's the plan for the next 40 minutes. I'm not going to give you 6 people. I'm going to give you 6 shapes, 6 specific forms a decision takes, so that you don't notice you're making one. Every one of them comes out of a passage, and every one of them is a mechanism you can check in yourself tonight. 2 things I'm holding until the end. Number 6 is the only positive one on this list, and it belongs to a teenager who made a decision about food that was still running his life 60 years later, so completely that his enemies could set a clock by it and had to design a law around him. And at the very end, there's one line about a man being dragged out of a burning city, and the 4 words in the middle of that verse are the reason I made this at all. Now, before I go one more step, 2 things. First, the picture I want you to carry. If you've ever seen a railway switch, the mechanism that moves a train from one line to another, you know it's not much. A section of rail that shifts a few inches. It takes a second to throw, and it makes a small mechanical sound. And 200 miles later, 2 trains that came through that junction, 90 seconds apart, are in different states. That's the whole thing. The switch is inches. The distance is miles. The throw takes a second, and the journey takes all day. And nobody riding on either train is thinking about a piece of metal in a junction they passed hours ago. Hold that. Second thing, and this one matters more, so hear it properly. Not everything you're living inside is a decision you made. Some of you are living inside a decision somebody else made, a parent's choice, a spouse's, something that was done to you when you were too young to have a vote, and it structured your whole life, and you have spent years being told to take responsibility for a room you were carried into. That is not what this message is about, and I don't want you carrying it. If what shaped your life was somebody else's choice, then the honest word for that is not a decision. It's an inheritance, and some inheritances are cruel, and none of that is on you. And some of it isn't anybody's decision. Some of it is a body, or an economy, or a country, or plain bad luck in a broken world. So take what fits and leave what doesn't. Rather you leave 4 of the 6 on the table than pick up one that isn't yours. All right, 6 shapes. The first shape is the decision that looked like good data. Genesis chapter 13. Abram and Lot have gotten too big to share land. Their herds are competing. Their herdsmen are fighting. And Abram does something remarkably generous. He tells his nephew to pick first. Family is like an ocean, vast and full of love. If you go right, I'll go left. And here's what the text says Lot did. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere. He looked. He assessed. And the text tells you what he saw, and it was accurate. It was well watered, and the writer even compares it to the garden of the Lord. That's not greed. That's not rebellion. That is a man doing exactly what a competent herdsman is supposed to do when offered a choice of grazing land. He evaluated the water supply. By every visible metric available to him that afternoon, he made the right call. Now watch what the text does over the next 6 chapters, because it's one of the most careful pieces of writing in Genesis. In chapter 13, it says Lot moved his tent as far as Sodom, toward it. He's outside, facing that direction. In chapter 14, when raiders sweep through and take captives, the text says they took Lot, who was dwelling in Sodom. He's inside now. He lives there. And in chapter 19, when 2 angels arrive in the evening, the text says Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. The gate is where the elders sat. The gate is where legal matters were settled and business was done. Sitting in the gate is not a location, it's a position. It means he had standing in that city, toward it, in it, governing in it. 3 verses spread across 6 chapters, tracking a drift that took decades. And there is no chapter where Lot decides to become a citizen of Sodom. There's no moment of compromise, no scene where he weighs it up. There's one afternoon where he looked at a valley and correctly assessed the water. And notice how each stage would have been completely defensible at the time. Moving the tent towards Sodom is just proximity to a market. You need somewhere to trade. Dwelling in Sodom is just a house instead of a tent, which is what any successful herdsman eventually does when he can afford walls. Sitting in the gate is just civic responsibility. You could argue it's a good thing, a righteous man withstanding in a corrupt city, in a position to influence it. Every single stage has a reasonable sentence attached to it. That's what a drift is. It's a sequence of individually defensible steps whose direction nobody adds up. And here's the part that gets me. Read what the narrator tells you at the end of chapter 13, immediately after Lot pitches his tent. He says the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Notice who is being told that. We are, the reader. There's no indication that Lot had that information when he was standing on that hill counting grass. Here's the law. The first shape is the decision you made correctly, on the best data available, about the only variable you thought to check. And that's the one that's hardest to catch, because there's nothing to repent of in the moment. You did the analysis. The analysis was right. You just ran it on water and the answer was about a city. You know the modern version. You took the job because of the number, and the number was accurate, and 11 years later the thing that actually shaped your life was the culture of the place, which was not on the offer letter. You picked the neighborhood for the schools. The schools were good. Nobody put on a spreadsheet what a 40-minute commute each way does to a marriage over a decade. You didn't get anything wrong. You optimized. And optimizing means picking a variable, and picking a variable means not picking the others. The second shape is the decision made in a fake emergency. Genesis chapter 25. Esau comes in from the field, and he's exhausted, and Jacob has been cooking. And Esau says, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." And Jacob, and let's be honest about Jacob, he is not the hero of this scene, says, "Sell me your birthright first." And Esau says the sentence. He says, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Now stop right there, because that sentence is the whole shape. He was not about to die. He was a young, powerful man who had been out hunting and had come home hungry. He was in a farmhouse with food in it. His brother was cooking. There was no scenario in that room where Esau died of anything. He said, "I am about to die," because that is what hunger feels like from the inside when you are in it. And he traded on the feeling rather than the fact. And the text gives us the summary, and it's brutal in its brevity. He ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. 5 verbs and a verdict. The whole transaction takes about 90 seconds. And then, generations later, the letter to the Hebrews looks back at it and says something that should make all of us careful. It says he sold his birthright for a single meal, and that afterward, when he wanted the blessing, he was rejected. And it adds that he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears. Whatever exactly that means, the shape of it is clear. He could not get back to the moment. And I want to be careful with that verse, because it has been used to terrify people, and that is not what it's for. That passage is not saying a person can pray one wrong prayer and be permanently locked out. That reading has done real damage to sincere people, and it does not survive the rest of the New Testament. What it does say plainly is that some doors have a time attached to them. Esau could weep. Esau could want it, and the birthright had already gone to somebody else, and there was no mechanism to reverse it. That's not a statement about God's willingness. It's a statement about how consequences work in time. Now let me make this modern, because this shape is everywhere. There is a state you get into where your body is running the negotiation. Exhausted at 11 at night, 3 days into something. Hungry, in a specific sense, lonely or scared about money, or so tired that the next 12 hours look like a wall. And in that state you will sign things. You will send the message. You will accept the offer. You will say the sentence to the person that you cannot unsay. You will agree to the arrangement because the arrangement solves the next 4 hours, and the next 4 hours are all you can currently see. And afterward, when you are fed and rested, you will look at what you agreed to and not fully recognize the person who agreed to it. Here's the law. The second shape is the decision made by a version of you that was in a state, and the state passed, and the decision didn't. So here's the practical thing, and it's not spiritual advice, it's just true. Do not decide anything permanent in a temporary condition. If you can name the state you're in, you are not in a position to sign. The third shape is the decision made with the warning read out loud in front of you. 1 Samuel chapter 8. The elders of Israel come to Samuel and ask for a king so they can be like all the other nations. And God tells Samuel to warn them, and Samuel does, and the warning is not vague. It's a list, and there's a word that keeps repeating in it. He will take your sons and make them serve in his chariots. He will take your daughters. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards. He will take 1/10 of your grain. He will take your servants and your best young men and your donkeys. He will take 1/10 of your flocks. Take. And then Samuel finishes with a sentence that should have ended the meeting. He says, "In that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not answer you in that day." That is a full disclosure statement. That is every consequence, itemized, read aloud, in advance, by a prophet, in public. And the people's response is recorded in one word first, and the word is, no. No, but there shall be a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations. They didn't argue with the forecast. They didn't say Samuel was wrong. They heard the whole list and wanted it anyway, because of the last clause, like all the nations. Here's the law. The third shape is the decision, where you had the information, and the information was accurate, and it lost to a comparison. And I want to say plainly what makes this one different from the first two, because it's the difference between them. Lot didn't know. Esau was in a state. These people knew and were fine. That's a harder one to face in yourself, and it's also the most common. Most of us are not short on information. We are short on the willingness to let information beat a feeling about what other people have. And that mechanism has never been more available than it is now. Every previous generation compared themselves to the people in their village. You can compare yourself to a curated selection of the most successful people on earth, at 2 in the morning, for free, in bed. Like all the nations was a sentence Israel had to work to arrive at. They had to travel, hear reports, imagine it. You get it delivered. So if the third shape is the one that landed on you, do not be too hard on yourself about being weak. The pressure on that particular mechanism is higher than anything Samuel was preaching against. Take a breath with me. All the way in and out slower than you think you need to. That's 3 shapes. A correct analysis of the wrong variable, a permanent signature in a temporary state, and a full warning that lost to a comparison. Let's pray one line before the rest, and if you're driving, keep your eyes open. Lord, show me the afternoon. I don't know when it was, and Zay, you do. And if this is landing, leave 5 words in the comments, 2 not for me. For you, and for whoever scrolls down next and needs to see somebody say it first. A minute got me here. Now, the fourth shape is the one I think is the most psychologically precise thing in the New Testament. The fourth shape is the decision that wasn't a choice at all. It was a position. Luke chapter 22. They've arrested Jesus in the garden and they're leading him away to the high priest's house. And Luke gives us one clause about Peter that is doing an enormous amount of work. Peter was following at a distance. Stop there. That is not a decision anybody would flag. He's following, which is more than most of them are doing, because the rest have scattered. He hasn't run. He's still on the road. He's just not close. And here's what I want you to notice. Nobody in that scene, including Peter, would have described that as a moment of decision. There's no deliberation recorded. There's no scene where he weighs it. He's walking, and the walking has a distance built into it, and the distance is the whole story. And then Luke tells us what happens next, and it's spatial too. They kindle a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sit down together. And Peter sat down among them. He is now sitting at the enemy's fire, warming himself with the people who arrested his friend, in the dark, an hour after a distance. And think about why he sat down. It was cold. That's it. That's the reason the text gives. They had kindled a fire because it was a cold night, and he was cold too, and there was a fire, and he sat. Nobody makes a spiritual decision about being cold. You go where the heat is. It's the least deliberate thing a human body does. And then a servant girl looks at him and says, "This man also was with him." And he says he wasn't. Now here's the thing I want you to take from this. The denial was not the decision. By the time that girl asked the question, the outcome had already been shaped by two spatial choices that took no deliberation at all: a distance on a road and a seat at a fire. Nobody sitting at that fire was going to say yes to that question. The seat had already answered it. And you know your version of this, because it's almost never a moment of betrayal in anybody's life. It's a distance. You didn't leave the church. You started sitting further back, and then sometimes you were busy. You didn't decide to be less close to your husband. You started going to bed at a different time. You didn't decide to let the friendship go. You just stopped being the one who initiates, and it turned out he wasn't going to be either, and 11 months went by. Here's the law. The fourth shape is a distance nobody would call a decision, and by the time a decision is actually required, it has already been made by where you're standing. Fifth shape is the decision you made by not making it. Acts chapter 24. Paul is under arrest, and the Roman governor Felix keeps sending for him and talking with him. And Luke tells us the content of one of those conversations. Paul reasoned with him about righteousness, self-control, and the coming judgment. Felix was alarmed. That's the word. He was frightened by it. And then he says the sentence. He says, "Go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you." Now, that is not a rejection. Read it carefully. He does not say no. He does not argue. He does not throw Paul out. He says, "Not now, later, when there's a better moment." And that is one of the most reasonable sounding sentences in the New Testament, and every one of us has said a version of it. And then Luke gives us two more details, and together they finish the man. The first is that Felix kept sending for Paul and talking with him, but that he was hoping money would be given him. So the ongoing conversations had another purpose running underneath them. And the second is a timestamp. Luke says, when 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. 2 years. 2 years of when I get an opportunity. 2 years of a governor with unlimited access to the man who could have told him anything he wanted to know, having regular conversations with him, and never once deciding. And then a letter arrives from Rome and he's replaced, and he leaves Paul in prison as a favor, and Felix walks out of the Bible and is never mentioned again. He never said no. He never had to. Here's the law. The fifth shape is the one where you never decide, and the not deciding turns out to have been the decision, and you find that out on the day the opportunity is administratively withdrawn. And I'll say the honest thing about this one, because it's the shape I know best in myself. There was a conversation I needed to have with somebody for a long time. I knew what it was about. I knew roughly what I'd have to say. And every time it came into range, I found a genuine reason it wasn't the week. A busy stretch, a health thing on their side, the holidays, a bad time for them financially. Every one of those was true. That's what I want you to hear. I never once told myself a lie. And then he died. And I want to be careful about how I use that, because I'm not telling it to you as a lesson with a bow on it. It's just what happened. There is a conversation that is now permanently unavailable, and the reason it's unavailable is not that I decided against it. It's that I never got around to deciding for it for about 6 years, using excellent reasons. Postponing feels virtuous. It feels like you're taking it seriously. It feels like the opposite of being reckless. You're not rushing in. You're waiting for clarity. You're being wise about timing. And there is real wisdom that looks exactly like that. That's what makes this shape so hard. The only difference I've found is this: real waiting has a next step in it. Postponement doesn't. If you cannot name the specific thing that would have to happen for you to move, you are not waiting. You are living inside a decision you have been careful never to say out loud. And now the sixth shape, and it's the only one on this list that goes the other way. The sixth shape is the decision that becomes architecture. Daniel chapter 1. He's a teenager. He has just been deported, taken out of Jerusalem, marched to Babylon, put in a training program to be reprocessed into a Babylonian official. New language, new literature, new name. And the text gives us one sentence about what he did. Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food. That's it. That's the whole decision. It's about a menu. It is not a dramatic act of resistance. Nobody was watching. He didn't make a speech. He went to the official quietly and asked for an alternative and proposed a 10-day trial. Notice how he did it, because it matters. He didn't refuse loudly. He asked, He gave the man a way to say yes without risking his own neck. Try it for 10 days and then look at us and compare. He made it easy for the person who had authority over him to let him do it. That's not compromise. That's the same decision, delivered in a form the room could receive. And I want you to be honest about how small that would have looked at the time. His city was gone. The temple was going to be destroyed. He had no political power, no army, no leverage of any kind. And the thing he found to draw a line about was vegetables. Now turn to chapter 6. Decades have passed. Empires have changed hands. Daniel is an old man now, and one of the 3 highest officials in the kingdom, and his rivals want him gone. And here's what the text says they found when they went looking for something to use. They could find no ground for complaint and no fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. So they say to each other, "We will not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel, unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." Read that. They cannot find a single thing. So they conclude that the only place to attack him is his religion, and specifically, that they can predict it. They build a law around his habits. They know he will keep them. And the text confirms it in one of the most quietly devastating sentences in the Old Testament. When Daniel knew the document had been signed, he went to his house, where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem, and he got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. The lion's den is not a decision Daniel makes in chapter 6. He doesn't weigh it. The text doesn't record a moment of deliberation. He goes home and does what he does at the time he does it, and the law is simply in the way. Because a decision made about a menu when he was 15 had, over 60 years, stopped being a decision and become the shape of a room he lived in. Here's the law. The 6th shape is a small choice that ran so long it turned into architecture, and by the end, his enemies understood his life better than he had to think about it. Now let me show you what happened when I put all 6 side by side, because there's something in the timing of them that I hadn't noticed. Go back and clock each decision, not the consequence, the decision itself. Lot lifted up his eyes. That's one look. Call it a few seconds. Esau said one sentence over a bowl. The whole scene is 5 verbs long. Israel had one meeting with one prophet, and the answer was one word, no. Peter's was a distance on a road. Nobody even said anything. Felix said one sentence, go away for the present, and then repeated it for 2 years without ever having to say anything new. And Daniel resolved something about food, quietly, probably in under a minute, as a teenager who had just lost everything. Not one of these took long. Every single one of them took years to live inside. Lot's glance cost him decades and ended with a city on fire behind him. Esau's 90 seconds followed him into the letter to the Hebrews. Israel's one word ran through 400 years of kings. Peter's distance produced the worst night of his life. Felix's sentence ran out the clock on his own soul. And Daniel's minute built a man that an empire could not find a fault in. Here's the master law, and if you take one sentence out of tonight, take this one. You did not take years to make it. You have taken years to live in it, and the thing that got you in here is exactly the same size as the thing that gets you out. A moment. That's the switch. That's the whole point of the picture I gave you at the start. The mechanism that put 2 trains in different states is a few inches of rail and 1 second of movement. And there is another switch further up the line. I want to be careful here, because there's a cheap version of that sentence, and I'm not preaching it. I am not telling you that one decision tonight undoes 20 years. It doesn't. Consequences are real, and some of what your decision built is going to be standing for the rest of your life, and pretending otherwise would be lying to you. What I'm telling you is narrower, and I think sturdier. The thing you have been treating as your permanent situation was installed by something that took a minute, which means the category of thing that changes your life is not enormous. It never was. You have been waiting for a decision big enough to match a room this size, and no such decision exists, because no such decision built it. It was a glance. It was a sentence. It was where you stood on a road. And I think that's actually the most practical thing in this whole message, so let me say it flatly. Stop waiting to feel ready for something proportional. There is no decision available to you that is the size of a decade. Nobody has ever been handed one. The people in this message weren't. Every one of them made something small, and then the years did the rest, in both directions. Which means the thing you have been putting off because it feels too small to matter is exactly the correct size. It's the only size there is. Daniel changed a menu. That's what was available to a deported teenager with nothing. And the room it built took 60 years to finish, and an empire couldn't find a fault in it. Take a breath. All the way down. Now let me put it in your hands. Which of the 6 is it? Was it a good analysis of the wrong variable? You checked the water and the answer was about the city? Was it a permanent signature in a temporary state and you can still name the state? Was it a warning you actually received, in full, from somebody who loved you, that lost to a comparison with what other people had? Was it a distance nobody would have called a decision? Is it a sentence you have been saying for 2 years that has the word later in it? Or is it the 6th one, and something small you started a long time ago has quietly built you a room you're grateful to be standing in? Don't type it. Don't tell me. Tell him, because he is the only one who was actually in the room on the afternoon you can't date. And 3 things before I let you go. Do not go looking for somebody to blame for the afternoon, including yourself. The point of finding the date is not to hold a trial. It's to know where the switch is. Do not decide anything permanent tonight in the state this message may have put you in. If you're shaken, that is exactly the condition Esau was in. And do not confuse a long consequence with a closed door. Those are different, and only one of them is final. Now here's the grace, and it's 4 words in the middle of a verse, and it's why I made this. Go back to Lot. The city is about to be destroyed. 2 angels have come to get him out. He's warned his sons-in-law, and they thought he was joking. Morning is coming and the angels are urging him to move. And here is what the text says. But he lingered. He lingered. The city is about to be leveled. He has been personally warned by visitors from God. His family is standing there, and the man cannot make himself walk out the door. I understand that completely, and so do you. He'd been there for decades. His married daughters were there. His standing was there. Everything he had built after that one glance at a valley was inside those walls. And here's the next sentence. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought him out and set him outside the city. They seized him by the hand. He didn't walk out. He was taken out, physically, by the wrist, like a child in a parking lot, because he was not going to do it on his own and the sun was coming up. And right there in the middle of that sentence, the writer stops to tell you why. The Lord being merciful to him. That's the 4 words. Not because Lot repented in time. Not because he finally saw clearly. Not because he made a better decision on the last morning. He lingered, and God took him by the hand. And centuries later, Peter writes a letter and refers to him as righteous Lot, which is a startling phrase for anybody who has read Genesis 19 closely. So if you are sitting there tonight having realized which afternoon it was, and having also realized that you have been lingering in it for a very long time and can't seem to make yourself move, you are the most recognizable person in this entire message. He did not lose Lot for lingering. He sent somebody to take his hand. And there's one more thing in that verse worth having. The angels didn't only take Lot. The text says they seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand. 4 people. All of them. Whatever that afternoon on the hill had cost, and it cost enormously, and the rest of that chapter is hard reading, the rescue was not calibrated to how much of it was his fault. They took the whole household out by the wrist. Let's pray, and then I'll let you go. Father, I have been living inside something I can't date, and I've been calling it my life. Show me the afternoon. Not so I can put myself on trial. You've never once needed me to do that, but so I can see where the switch is. And where the consequences are going to stand for years. Give me the grace to live in them without pretending. And where I'm lingering, do for me what you did for a man in a burning city, because I know exactly how slow I am to walk out of things I built. Amen. Here's your one thing this week, and it's in 2 parts. The first part takes 10 minutes, and you should do it with a pen. Pick the thing. The arrangement, the distance, the pattern, whatever came to mind in the first 5 minutes of this message and has been sitting there since. And try to date it. Not the year it got bad. The year it started. And if you can't find a day, find a season. And if you can't find a season, tell God you can't find it and ask him for it, because he was there. And the second part is Daniel's. Make one small decision this week that could still be running in 10 years. Not a big one. Daniel's was about a menu. A time you get up. A day you call somebody. A room you walk into on a Sunday. Something small enough that it wouldn't make a good story, and specific enough that it has a date. because that is the only kind of decision that has ever built anybody in either direction. And one thing I'll ask, as ministry, somebody you know is living inside something and has never once located the afternoon. They think it's just how their life is. Send this to them. Don't write a paragraph, just send it. And leave 5 words in the comments for you and for the next person who scrolls past and needs to see somebody go first. A minute got me here, because it did. A glance at a valley, a bowl of stew, 1 word in a meeting, a gap on a road, a sentence with later in it, and a boy who said no to a menu. Inches of rail, and a second, and then years. There's another switch up the line, and the one who takes people out by the hand has never once been slowed down by how long they've been standing there. God bless you, my brother, my sister. Until next time.